Moving on, I would like to also acknowledge that those of us in Seattle tonight are on Duwamish native land. And if you are interested in making rent payments directly to the Duwamish, you can do that at realrentduwamish.org. Real Rent is an organization that supports the revival of the Duwamish culture and vitality of the Duwamish tribe. So for, again, those of us who are occupying Duwamish land, you can actually pay rent directly to Duwamish in exchange for occupying their lands. If you're not in Seattle, I'm going to share another resource, which is a map of native lands. It's actually a resource from Canada, but you can, as you travel and move and recreate outside, you can track whose land you might be occupying or recreating on, and think about how you might pay reparations or get involved with the vitality of those tribes. So I'm just taking a moment to share those resources with everyone. Moving on, many of you are probably familiar with BikeWorks as a South Seattle-based cycling nonprofit with a mission to empower youth and build resilient communities by using the bicycle as a vehicle for change. We do that through our youth and adult programs, community outreach initiatives, a robust bicycle recycling program, and during this quarantine time, in lieu of our regular summer programming, which involves events and rides and gathering together, we've been doing a monthly series around these bicycle stories. And so we are interested in recruiting more speakers. If you or someone you know might have a really interesting bicycle story to tell, definitely get in touch with us. The last resource I would like to share with you, just to learn a little bit more about BikeWorks and our work in the community, is our About page. You can kind of learn about what BikeWorks does. And I also wanted to highlight that on the About page of our website, we have published our Racial Equity Action Plan that is from 2017 to 2020. And we would like our community to just be aware of that action plan we have in place to help hold us accountable to those goals. Also, maybe if you work for an organization that is looking to put together a racial equity action plan, you can perhaps use that as a template. And it's always good to share resources and cross-pollinate as much as possible for this work. So I just wanted to share that. So without any further ado, I will introduce our speaker. Phyllis Porter is the founder of the Seattle chapter of Black Girls Do Bike, which is a national movement creating opportunities and representation for Black female cyclists. Phyllis is also a member of the Rainier Riders Cycling Club. She's a Southeast Seattle resident, former BikeWorks employee. She currently sits on the BikeWorks People of Color Racial Equity Taskforce. She's on the board of Seattle Neighborhood Greenways, which I mentioned. She's one of the co-hosts of South End Connect. She's a member of Whose Streets, Our Streets, a member of the Transportation Equity Workgroup, and former candidate for Seattle City Council. And she also has a small business Porter Projects, where she consults on different types of transportation projects, including communication, outreach, and engagement. So hope you got that all down. There will be a quiz on Phyllis's various accomplishments at the end of this event. And without any further ado, I will turn it over to Phyllis.
Hi, thank you, Elise. Thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate that. And to everyone at home, hello, welcome. Thank you for inviting me into your home this evening, and also to BikeWorks. Thank you for thinking of me when you wanted to have another guest speaker. I'm really honored to be able to do this. So I guess we'll just get right into it. I'm just going to tell you a little bit first about what's going to happen as we continue on. Tonight I will share my bicycle journey, which has led me from riding regularly to riding with an avid cycling group. It has taken me on to advocacy, commitment to community, and also starting a local chapter of a national women's bike group. The photos that I'm sharing tonight are substantial attributes that I hope will give you a vivid impression of a recollection of my last 8 years on a bicycle. So let's get started. This is my bike journey. My journey in life Okay, first slide, I'm sorry. I do want to say something before I go to this first picture. Can you go back just one? I'm sorry. Can you just go back one, please? Okay, this is my bike journey. I do want to tell you something. I want to leave you with this, or have you think about it as we continue to go forward. My journey in life on a bicycle has led me on a trail of rugged terrain, some smooth pavement, rocky trails, and even a few potholes along the path. But I held steady to the handlebars and was able to hold my balance. I proceeded with braking power by a flex of my hand. I managed to hold the speed throughout the distance. This is my bike journey. Next slide. First slide, please.
Working on it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know if you heard me or not. In 2012, my daughter, Kiki, she was a senior in high school. She and I would often talk about how life was evolving and the importance of planning the future. We began to converse about college. And in the midst, she stopped and said, "Mom, I'm leaving for college soon and you need to get a hobby so you won't be an empty nester." And you know me being as optimistic as I am, I replied, "Okay." So that fall, she entered college and I had a new hobby. Next slide, please. As a child, I rode a bike, but I had limited use. My father only allowed me to ride my bike to the end of the block. There was 5 houses on the block and we were house number 2. So for those who know me, probably can figure out now why I like to go long distances. I just didn't have that opportunity when growing up. And even in high school, it didn't get any better. But at 16, my dad got me a car, and therefore, that was the end of my bike riding. So I trained for 4 months. I joined the cycling club, and I also trained on a road, not a road bike, but on a mountain bike for 4 months. I joined the cycling club, and I began riding regularly. At that point, my daughter was away at college. She was happy that mom was okay. Next slide. My new family, I call them my adopted family. My trainer was a member of the Rainier Riders Cycling Club. He invited me to ride with the group. Rainier Riders is an avid cycling group. It's a community of people that look like me. They get together, they socialize, they have fun for health reasons and just for building relationships. Well, as I began to ride with Rainier Riders, I noticed safety issues along different areas within the communities. There was challenging, such as signal timing indifference, multiple potholes, lack of cycle tracks. I mean, the list continued on. But one thing that stood out in my mind more than anything, and that was the lack of respect of drivers passing by cyclists on the road. So at that point, I made mental note in my head. As the group continued on, we started to get more into community. I found myself doing outreach with the community, recruitment, media relations, just building community relations. And sooner than later, Rainier Riders, our name was on the map. We were now associated with Cascade, you know, the United States, the nation's largest cycling group. We were working with Bike Works and some of the other bike organizations within the city, like Break the Cycle. Co-founder of Rainier Riders, which is the deputy director, this happens to be the deputy director of Bike Works, Ed Ewing. I know you're after someone, Ed, so hi, Ed. Like I said, Ed was co-founder of Rainier Riders when I came in. And he and I have ridden many times together. When he was executive director at Cascade, he was over the Major Taylor project. The students there that were trained to ride to the STP, Seattle to Portland, 200 miles each year. Well, I chaperoned some of those students. I also chaperoned some of those students when they went to, when they took the Redmond to Bellingham, which was 100 miles. So thank you, Ed, for Rainier Riders. Next slide, please. There we are. There's the other part of Rainier Riders. That day Ed wasn't there. And you see, this is the fast group. We were in Tacoma this day working with the city of Tacoma. We took a ride, Point Defiance, and we led a ride for the city. So that's the group of Rainier Riders. Next slide. Here, this is Bike Works. This is a different world. This is Bike Works building, and this is the meeting of the Rainier Valley Greenways, which is like a baby at one point, Seattle Neighborhood Greenways, which was the mother of all coalitions of the Greenways. I attended my first Greenways here, and we host, well, actually Bike Works was the hoster for Greenways, Rainier Valley Greenways. And even though I went to that meeting that night, I was still confused. The next day, I didn't know what a Greenway was. I just didn't get it. But one thing I did hear is that the interest of Rainier Valley Greenways was to get people safely to and from where they wanted and needed to go. So ding, 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 a little bell went off. Okay, I'll ride a bike. We have issues. They're working on getting people back and forth safely. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. But I also know with that comes accessibility, affordability, infrastructure improvement. So these were all of the things at this point that I knew that my bicycle would really like. Like the bike was just sitting back, smiling, dancing. Yeah, we're gonna go over some safe streets, So I was all happy for that. I also met Executive Director Deb Sauls that evening. And eventually she hired me as a Bike Work employee. I worked as the outreach assistant. And this was to facilitate the Rainier Valley Greenways meetings. Being a previous educator at local community colleges, it would be quite different. However, being a facilitator and a manager of adult students, the transformation worked fine.
Rising to the challenge.
Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, let's go back. Let's go back one more. While I was here, my work began. I began to coordinate meetings, plan meetings, schedule speakers for specific transportation issues. RVG was fairly new. Rainier Valley Greenways was new. And we wanted the organization to be a community-driven. We also wanted to be a community-based. So that was going to take some work. So Deb also hired another person. If you're watching out there, hi Lauren Squires. She and I were co-facilitators, and we started the work. We got out, we started knocking on doors down Rainier Avenue in the Southeast End, churches, organizations, businesses, residents, and we wanted the community to become involved. So we started to ask the question, what concern do you have as far as transportation? What issues in the street are there that you don't know where to turn to, who to talk to? And people began to talk. They said, well, you know, there's graffiti, there's street graffiti we don't like. There's street lighting in different instances. The lights aren't staying on long enough, there's signal timing, and the list continued on. But again, one of the biggest concerns they had was cars running into people and buildings on Rainier Avenue. Next slide, please. This is where the work began. We're at meetings. We have people sitting there, we're talking, we're discussing, but it goes beyond the office. It goes beyond the meeting room. So we had to get outside again. This time we weren't knocking on doors. This time we actually had a meeting down at Rainier Avenue in Juneau. And we saw that people weren't walking down to Orcas to cross the light. Instead, they were crossing the light here. There's an unmarked crosswalk here, and it was dangerous. So we had flags already attached to the poles that were put there by either community people, either maybe it came from the city, I'm not for sure. But we used them. So that day I utilized the flags, talked to the people and asked them why they were not going down to Orcas. And they were like, well, it's too far away. I don't want to walk, but you know, it's unsafe here. So I just walk people back and forth across the street. So if you go down to Rainier Avenue now, the same intersection, you're gonna see a change. There's a crosswalk, there's a marked crosswalk, and you will also see flashing crosswalk lights. So that was one of the things that has come out of Rainier Valley Greenways from community and advocacy. And again, it goes far beyond walking people across the street. It takes green, greenways to green and greenways. We're talking about budget. We're talking about money, fees. We need money now. So here I am, along with the current executive director, Gordon Padalford is sitting there. We had two other members that came along to talk to, at the time, which is now our former council member, Shero. We had to talk to him about budget. We need money for Rainier Avenue. We need money for all of these issues that people are having problems with. And if you continue to watch, you'll know whether or not we got it. Or if you live in the community, you'll know whether or not we got it. Next slide. Okay, and community building and support. Here, another area of Greenways. We're outdoors, we're with the people. On the left side here, we have co-facilitator Lauren. Lauren and I say we were working at the Rainier Valley Heritage Parade, which Rainier Valley Greenways was doing every year to bring more focus and awareness to Rainier Valley Greenways. So we had a booth and we had other Greenways members at the booth, but Lauren and I were out on bikes. We would go out in the community, down the street, part of the parade, and we talked to people. Okay, we got Rainier Valley Greenway booth up here. This is what we're doing. You should get involved. Do you have any issues? Come on, jump on. They jump on the bike. We roll them back to the booth. And then they talk to the people there, get balloons or whatever the case, get more information, sign up, and we recruited people. We had people that just came up for the awareness, didn't know what was going on. But that was a happy time. That was one of the happy things that Rainier Valley Greenways did. But on the other side of the screen, it's not as happy. This was somewhat of a horrific time. I'm standing here with the two people that are standing to the left of me were family members of a gentleman who was killed. This individual died after getting off of work. He ran over on the sidewalk after getting off of work and heading home. His family members, his daughter and his niece, were there to talk. We also had executive director at that time of SDOT, Scott Kubley, with us. And we also have former, which was at that time current council member Bagshaw. And we had other Rainier Valley Greenway members with us. Sorry for the noise. Okay. And so we, the family did said some words about her father. And, it was a really painful time for her and for the family and also for RBG because we're here for the opposite of what happened to him. After the tribute, the vigil, which is something else we do hold vigils for people that have lost individuals on bicycles or on transportation or are seriously injured. So this was one of the vigils we were having. And directly after, we had something called a solution meeting, where we met with city officials, we met with the family, we met with transportation, and we sit down and talk and try to figure out if the incident that happened, if it was partly due in any ways to transportation or whatever the reason, we needed to find out so we could come up with solutions to move forward. Next slide, please. Okay, activism. Activism time has arrived. Advocacy, we've been doing it, now it is time to act. The little girl at the top of the page here, 6-year-old Zaytuna Adu. She was struck by a car while walking with her father in a crosswalk on Martin Luther King. She was going to her ESL tutor lesson at the Boys and Girls Club, holding hands with her father, walking through the crosswalk. A red SUV came through, hit her, left her in the street. She had life-threatening injuries. Broken pelvis, broken arm, broken leg, and a head injury. The doctor didn't know if she would make it through the night, but she did. Carol Cobb Salon. But right before then, one other thing. At that point, it was a big uproar in the Somali community because this little girl had just gotten hit. And it was a hard time. Again, it was a very hard time for them. So at that point, I reached out to the Somali community. Rainier Valley reached out. And we organized a rally for Little Zaytuna. And we wanted people to know what was going on and how dangerous the streets really were. And 200 people came. 200 people attended that vigil. Again, we had a solution meeting afterwards. And the great thing about this is that the women of the Somali community, they spoke up about what had happened to Little Zaytuna and what they wanted to happen in the future with their community. SPD was there, other residents were there, RBG, city officials, and we eventually worked some things out. And again, later on, you'll know if changes were made. Down in the bottom, and to your left, you see the Carol Cobb Salon. When the car ran into Carol Cobb Salon, I was standing right outside on the curb in which the car approached prior to ending up in Carol Cobb Salon. I was working for Bike Works, and I stopped at the Greek restaurant like two doors down. And I decided, you know what, I've already had this week. I don't want to eat Greek, so I'm just gonna go down the street. So I walked out, I saw 3 people. I saw a man, a woman, and a child, and a few people that worked there. So I walked out, and I walked to the corner, always wait on the light, always go by the crosswalk, signal timing. So I waited, and as I walked across the street, I could see this car coming, but it wasn't driving straight. It was quickly approaching me. And so I had enough time to scream. I jumped, and the pole that was directly in front of me before I jumped, she hit it. She hit the pole. The top part of it went up over into the building of Carol Cobb. The other part splattered, and the devices hit my leg. I turned around, and I could see the car rolling straight into Carol Cobb Salon. The car went in. There was smoke. It was all dark. People started running in to make sure that the passenger from the car, or the people that were inside the restaurant and the salon, that they were okay. So people were pulled out, the community together. They stood together. They reached in and they pulled this person out. So again, like I said, there was chaos. No one died, but many included injuries. Next slide, please. With this, this goes back to the Carol Cobb Salon. So at that time we got out. I'm gonna have another slide in just a minute showing some of the things we've done. But from this, this is when the city announced the changes that were coming. In effort to support safer routes to school and the injuries that were happening in Southeast Seattle, the mayor at that point, he stepped up and said that he and the council wanted to do something. So we can talk a little bit more about that, or I can also give you the website, or if you live in the community, you probably already know what happened. Next slide. So at this point, said enough is enough. We have a lot of attention right now on the community. Little Zaytuna was hit. The damages that was done to Carol Cobb, the people that were injured, we had city attention. We had residents' attention. We had SPD attention. We had transportation attention. So we knew it was time to do. It was time to do something. So at that point, the group, RBG and I, we related. We could easily relate even more so now because one of the members of Rainier Valley Greenways, which was me, was actually self-evident that these things were happening. So it was time for RBG to set new priorities. So the priorities were fixing Rainier Avenue. So when we started to march, some of the things that we were rallying for, even though those accidents had happened, I shouldn't say accidents, we say collisions. Those collisions have been happening for a while. And at this point, over 1,236, that may be the exact number, of car collisions happened on Rainier Avenue in a short period of time, equaling 1.5 accidents per day. Again, enough was enough. And that is when we named Rainier Avenue the most dangerous street. And we said, we want to take control. If we can do anything about it, this will not happen again. Next slide. So now we're down to, that had led me on being able to work in the community, hear from the community, advocate for the community. All of this just starting from my bike. You know, at this point I had learned skills on related transportation issues. I had learned how to build community relationships. I met with community. I had built community with council, with veterans, with bike shops, organizations. And I had began to understand policy and how everything worked. In order to make change, it has to go through policy. So knowing that and how I wanted everyone who was impacted by the things that were going on, I wanted to take it further. So in 2019, last year, I ran for Seattle City Council District 2 here in the district. I think there's a few other pictures if you want to go to the next slide. And doing a part of that, all of that, you know, political, even before I ran for Seattle City Council, I had the opportunity to meet some of the people that were holding office, had the opportunity to talk. Here I am with Maxine Waters, our representative, Maxine Waters. I had the opportunity to talk to her. She found out I was really enthused about running for office, and I told her I was gonna run, and I actually did, so she gave me a thumbs up. Next slide. Also, this bike has led me to the governor's mansion. From one of the incidences that happened on Rainier Avenue, Stephen Hague he was writing for a newspaper, I think at that time, or magazine, and he had been following the work that I was doing, or Rainier Valley Greenways was doing, and he personally asked me to go on a show. First of all, they taped a show, Fixing Rainier Avenue, and eventually he called me one day and he said, if you could ask the governor, I didn't know what was going on. He said, if you could ask the governor anything, what would you ask the governor? Well, when I was working at Bike Works part-time, I was also, because my contract for teaching had ended at the community college of Tacoma. So therefore I was also working for criminal justice reform. And I was working with post-incarcerated men and women who were coming out of prison, who were seeking employment, seeking shelter, seeking drug treatment, and who really wanted to make a difference and be better, or to prosper, or to just take care of themselves, get the pride, you know, have that pride, be able to take care of yourself. And that's what I was working with. So when Stephen Hague asked, what would you ask the governor? I said, the first thing I would ask him, Governor, what are you going to do for all the people that are coming out of prison? And there's a stigma that says, once a felon, always a felon. You know, these are people that need to be able to return back to society without things being said all the time, and without a shot. And he said, you know what? You can go and ask him yourself. And I'm like, what? He said, yes, I want you to go and meet the governor. And I had other questions too, but I actually had a chance to go out to the governor's mansion, talk to Governor Inslee, sat in the home, and it was just really inspiring. Next slide, please. Community of sisterhood. It all started for me. Well, I shouldn't say it all started for me. Sisterhood did start with Rainier Riders, because I have met some wonderful women, and we are still friends today. You know, besides COVID, you know, we've gone to each other's houses before all this happened. We've ridden together, and they've even supported me in Black Girls Who Bike, which have come. Some of them have even joined Black Girls Who Bike. So thanks to that sisterhood. But I took a trip to Baltimore back in 2015, and I rode with one of the people here, the lady in the yellow. She lives in Baltimore, but she also comes to Seattle pretty frequently and visits another friend of ours. And she invited me out to Baltimore. She and her boyfriend invited me out to Baltimore. So I went, and she said, well, we're gonna go ride. And so we rode, it was more than 4, but it was Black Girls Do Bike, Baltimore. And we had a great time. We rode, we talked, we met up with Black Girls Do Hike, and it was just awesome. And on the plane, I was thinking already, this brain is sticking, Seattle, Seattle, Seattle. Can I get this in Seattle? So I get home, I get situated, and I'm on the computer. I got to find out who do I need to talk to bring Black Girls Do Bike to Seattle. And believe me, I mean, there's an ad on Black Girls Do Bike. It said, Seattle Shero, who wants to bring Black Girls Do Bike to Seattle? Like me! So I got in touch with the founding Monica from Pennsylvania. I talked with her, told her what I was about, what all the things I had done, and she thought I was a great match. And she said, well, this is starting a group. These are the things you should know, things you should do, and da-da-da. She gave me what I needed. And I started Black Girls Do Bike. And since that time, we have, this morning I looked, I think there was 203, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people that had joined. During the pandemic, I mean, we've had like almost 3 to 5 people per week that has been joining since, I would say, for the last month or so. And if you look over to the right, this is just a day with some of the ladies. We had gone out for a ride, and you know, it's not all about riding, it's about having fun. For me, it's about freedom. It's about having fun. It's about fitness. And we had our fun on the bike. We had our freedom on the bike. Now we were having fun in a restaurant. So we stopped and we had an early brunch over at the Stonehouse restaurant. Community of Sisterhood. Next slide, please. Not too shabby, huh? I just wanted to put this in there because Black Girls Do Bike is doing amazing things throughout the country, from LA to Dallas to Houston to Buffalo, New York. And 2020, they're the 2020 Bike Club of the Year. And that's a pretty big thing for Black Girls Do Bike. We've only been around for a few years. It was started by Monica in Pennsylvania. When she said she was riding in the community with her children, she didn't see anyone else that looked like her. She wanted to get the women together for the joy of cycling, and that's what she did. And so we know that it said Black Girls Do Bike, but it's not just for Black girls. It's a place for sisterhood where Black girls can actually see other girls that look like them, can communicate. We can talk about braids, we can talk about curly hair, we can talk about whatever issues that we know about. However, it's for the joy of cycling. So we encourage other women to come. I have people that are on the board with me at Seattle Neighborhood Greenways. Merlin, I put you on the spot. She's come out and she's ridden with us so many times. And then there's other people that I've met along the way that have also come out. So if you're interested, you can check us out go to the Facebook page at Black Girls Do Bike Seattle. We'll be happy to have you. Next slide. And this is a Black Girls Do Bike. We had last year, we had a meet and greet. We met upstairs here at my residence, and we had a cake, Welcome Black Girls Do Bike. And these are all women that have either ridden with me on Black Girls Do Bike or ridden with us, or either these are, and also some women came for the first time. Some women came because we're SISTERHOOD. Some came because other people invited and I invited. But we had a great time, and see you on the bike. Thanks everybody for being here and listening to my journey on the bike.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phyllis. Inspiring stuff.
Thank you.
To get through. Let's open it up to some questions. If you have a question for Phyllis, if you could maybe just type something into the chat box, and then I'll sort of call on you that way. I'll get us started, Phyllis. When you were, well, actually, let's go over to Kiki.
Kiki. Does that name sound familiar? This is Kiki, everybody. This is my daughter. Hi, Kiki.
Hi.
Hi. Hello, here to show some support, and never really hear my mom in this light or see her in this setting, so this is really fun. My question is, what's next for Black Girls Do Bike Seattle? What's on the roadmap?
What's on the roadmap for Black Girls Do Bike Seattle? Well, right now, currently under the pandemic, we're not pushing or promoting large bike rides just because I want to make sure that everyone is safe. So what I've asked everyone to do is to actually, make sure you're solo riding, get out, make sure you're still on the bike. And there have been some women that have actually gotten into smaller groups. So right now, I guess the next thing for us is to get past COVID so we can get together and have another meet and greet and make plans for the following year.
I think we're all looking forward to that day.
Thank
Phyllis,
you.
could I add something to that, Phyllis?
Yes.
Please.
Everyone who's on this call, what Phyllis has started here is part of a national movement. And one other thing that's on the horizon, and what's next for Black Girls Do Bike, is Black Girls Do Bike has entered into a partnership with United States USAC Cycling. And USAC Cycling is the national governing body of competitive racing. And the specific focus of the partnership with Black Girls Do Bike is not only to build community, but it's also to identify competitive African-American women cyclists to compete at an Olympic or an international level. And so that was just announced last week by USA Cycling. And Phyllis, I love how our lives have continued to intersect on the bike, and as a member of USA Cycling's Diversity and Equity Inclusion team and as Bikeworks, I will continue to help you champion this effort in partnership and in tandem. So that's also what's on the what's next on the horizon for Black Girls Do Bike.
Well, thank you, Ed. I really appreciate that.
Kathy, are you raising your hand?
Wait. Oh, okay, I'm muted now, right? Hi, Phyllis.
Hi, Kathy.
I was really pulling for you for City Council. How do you feel about that run, and what do you think would it be like if you were on the City Council right now? And
You know, thanks, Kathy. You know, that was one of the things I did want to kind of stay away from tonight, politics. I don't mind talking about it personally, but I just didn't really want to bring it into this bike journey. So that's, I mean, I do have some things I could say about it that I would love to talk to you off. But I just wanted to keep this more so.
one thing that people can do to get out and bike by them solo is go out and explore those Stay Healthy streets. Check them out. They're on Google Maps. So sometimes I went out and did leaflets on almost all of them in West Seattle, and every single house, up and down the stairs. But anyway, sometimes the signs were misplaced, and SDOT needs to know, Summer Jocelyn and SDOT needs to know when those signs have been moved, and people were out there using them. It was great. The streets, it was fantastic. Street full of kids, 10 kids live on one block, and they were all playing out in the middle of the street. But if the sign gets moved, then traffic starts coming through, and it gets more dangerous.
You know, I also had that issue, but I think when I talked to Rainier Valley Greenways, they said we actually can move them back to that place. But yes, you're right. It does need to be reported if you're not, you know, if you don't have the opportunity or you feel comfortable enough putting it back. But yes, those streets are awesome. I rode Monday morning, Lake Washington, of course. I try to go out every week. It was awesome. I met 2 people on the road. One lady had lost her phone, and helped her find her phone. And she said, I'm joining Black Girls Do Bike. And I told her, you know, we talk more about healthy streets. I talked to her about Rainier Valley Greenways. Even though we were social distance, we still had that conversation. So thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. And you got my number. We can talk.
Talk more about that offline.
Yeah.
Erin, did you have a question?
There's the unmute. Phyllis, thanks so much for sharing your story. I can't count how many times I've been saying that's so awesome during hearing your journey. I just huge kudos to you for building this tremendous community. Question, and that would be, what would be your recommended ride for taking out somebody who's new to cycling and you're just trying to get them to experience the bike? What are some of your favorite places to get a newbie introduced?
You know, that's a great question. Before I answer that, I do want to tell you this. When I rode for Rainier Riders, the fast group, I know that when women, not just women, but people would come on, and, you know, that's the fast group. They can get up to 21 miles per hour, 16. They're moving fast. And so, you know, it wasn't for everybody. So at that point, I began to have slow rides. But what I would do, okay, we had our slow rides. I would just basically find trails, and we set it up. And if people wanted to come out, they would. But since I'm with Black Girls Do Bike, I do it a little bit differently. When a new person has never ridden, or they just want to get into riding, they haven't ridden in a long time, I sit down and I have a conversation with that person. How fast do you want to go? Now, first question is, do you want to be on trails or do you ride on the street? So I listen. And then I ask them, how fast do you want to go, or how slow do you want to go? So I get all the information from that person. But if this is a person that has never been out and they want to stay strictly on trails, Healthy Streets. I just introduced someone to Healthy Streets a few days ago. I put them on Healthy Street. We went out to Sue's Creek in Kent over the weekend. That was about 12 miles. I think it was about 12 miles. So first of all, I would just listen to what they want and get a feel for that. And then if it's a trail, find a seclusive trail. Another thing that I do before I take anybody out, I make the ride myself. I don't care where it is. If it's someplace new, I never take anyone with me. unless it's my buddy Maryville who wants to go out with me and we ride together to scope it out. So that would be my suggestion. I hope that helped, but that would be my suggestion to you.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill, you had a question in the chat that I missed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Jill.
Okay,
Yes.
hi, I'm Camerushai. I just had a couple of very basic questions. Like if you own multiple bicycles, which is your favorite? Or if not, can you tell us what is so wonderful and magical about your own bike?
Okay. First of all, I own 2 bicycles. And, you know, I've never bought a bicycle since I've been riding. I've always worked to help someone get on a bike. And for some reason, an organization or someone has donated me a bike. Rainier Riders gave me my 1 bike. I even got a bike from Cascade through Ed for helping out, you know, taking the kids down to STP and also over to Bellingham. But I have 2 bikes. I wish I could show you a picture. I had a picture, but I didn't show it. My bike's name is Candy because she's so sweet. I mean, she takes me wherever I want to go. She gets me there, she gets me back. She's purple, and purple's not my color. She's purple, she has red and white handlebars. She has really nice rims on her. She is just so pretty. And then I have another bike, which is a fold-up bike that I actually got from Bike Works maybe 3-4 years ago. It's a fold-up bike, and I take it with me from time to time. I put it in the back of my car. My favorite bike is called a Kestrel, Kestrel. It's an older bike, but it's a beauty. And the other bike is a Bahama. I can't remember the exact name of it, but you can tell that's not my favorite because I know the name of my other one. So did I answer your question? Did I leave anything off?
Yeah, totally. I was really excited to hear about Candy. I think that I just like hearing people get enthusiastic about riding and their bikes. So thank you.
I love one more thing. You know, I love my bike. Like I say, I go out for freedom. When I ride, I don't think about anything else. And when I'm on it, you know, when I'm riding her, you know, I make sure that the tires are aired before I leave. You know, the water bottle's intact, and just make sure everything is in working condition before I take off. And if I'm good to her, you know, she's always been good to me.
Love that.
Thank you, Jill.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to turn it over to Bike Works Deputy Director Ed Ewing for some closing remarks.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you tuning in.
You know, as I share again, Phyllis, Bike Works and USAC will support you and your efforts hands down moving forward. So we look forward to collaborating with you on that. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
For sharing not only your vision, but your heart and your strategy tonight. And hopefully those who have attended tonight can be inspired to support and join and start their own group too, and become an advocate, you know. So yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed. And Deb Sauls, our Executive Director, did you have some closing words?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Phyllis, for sharing your story, getting on the bike and turning it into being an avid bicyclist and then an activist and so much more. So I really appreciate all of that. I appreciate seeing the pictures. The chicken crossing the street activism was awesome. I loved that day. So it was great to see those photos. And I really appreciate your story and appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Deb. Thank you, Deb.
I
also appreciate you. You know, you've been a really good supporter since I've been around, from the job to just community work. And so I just want to say thank you to all the staff, to Elise for putting this together tonight, for Jazz, also for Ed, and just everybody who had a part in it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. And thank you to Ed for joining the team. We're super excited about that. And I wanted to just mention there'll be a follow-up email tomorrow where we'll put a lot of these posts and links for all the stuff that Phyllis is involved with, as well as some things at Bike Works. If you want to stay tuned with us for the next Bicycle Stories in the online series, a newsletter link. We have a virtual tour of Bike Works if you ever want to come and see us from afar. We have that going on now, and we'll send a link for that, as well as our big event, Bike Excitement, is coming up in October. So we hope you can stay involved with us and stay involved with Black Girls Do Bike and all the movements that Phyllis is going to start in the future. So thanks, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deb, and thanks,